Hey, welcome back. In this video, we're going to make it so that shooting players will kill them, and we're also going to fix the position of the gun. So you can see that the gun's really not sitting in the player's hands as you might want. So we're going to fix that up. So to do that, we need to go into the first person folder, go to character, mesh, and in here is the mesh data. Now, just play in the editor, and then if you press Shift F1 or Tab Alt, you can get your mouse cursor back. And then you want to come into the mannequin arms and open that up. And you can see here's our socket we made called grip point. Now the weapon is currently attached to this socket called grip point. So to fix it, you can literally just rotate it. And if you press W, you can move it as well. So I like it about there. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I think there works pretty well. And you can spend as much time as you want, getting it the way you want it. So just hit save when you're done, and that should all save. And if I hit play again, you can see it's still in the right place. On a side note, now that we've added multiple guns, we can actually try them out. You can go to first person BP and open up the player, and where that drop down is, you might have already done this, but you can click the drop down and then select scoped rifle, and this should work just fine as well. And if I hit play, you can see, there we go, we're now holding the scoped rifle. And if you have a lot of patience, you could actually go through and duplicate these by right clicking and hitting duplicate, and then just following the same steps, and you could make a bunch more weapons. But in the interest of keeping the video a little bit shorter, we're just going to have these two, the scoped and the assault rifle, for now. So let's add the ability to shoot our gun. Now to shoot a gun, we need to click the left mouse button. So in most games, that's how you shoot. And we need some way of detecting when the player presses the left mouse button. So let me introduce you to the input system. If you click on edit, you can go down to the project settings. And in each project, there will be a input tab. The first one is action mappings. The action mappings is for things that happen once. For example, you press the space bar once and you jump, or you click once and then you fire your gun. If you go to access mappings, this is for constantly changing values. For example, how many units has your mouse moved to the left, for example, or how many units up has the joystick been. And you can actually see there is a little description here, but you'll notice we actually already have this fire mapping in here, and that's because the first person project has firing in it by default. So we already have one defined. If you click the plus, you can add more, but it's called fire, and you can see left mouse button will call the fire action mapping. So to actually use the action mapping is really simple. You just come into the blueprint here. You can see I've left this here, but to use it, you just type fire, and you can see input action events fire. And if I click on that, now I can respond to the player pressing their left mouse button. So let's just test that this works. If I drag out, you can test if something's working by typing print string. And this will just print some text to the screen so that you can make sure that it's working. So just type in the text you want to do. For example, I fired my gun. You know what? Let's type pew pew. So compile and save. And then if pew pew shows up, then it works. So I'm going to click. And as you can see, it says pew pew. So there you go, we've added firing to our game. Alright. We're going to go a little bit better than that. But at least now we know that inputs are actually being registered. Now, this is the first video where we make a really important feature, and that's shooting. Now, before I tell you about shooting, I really want to stress a simple but very powerful and really important to know concept. And that is the server. And how, one of the biggest challenges of networking, right? So let's say that you're playing a game of Fortnite and God forbid, let's say you're playing Fortnite. There is Fortnite running on your own computer, but somewhere out there in the world, Fortnite is also running on 49 other people's computers, right? And one of the biggest challenges we have when you're making a networked game is how do you sync the game up so that everybody sees the same thing? And this is actually really difficult. So one of the best ways we have of doing it is having one player, which we call the server, and everyone else is the client. Now, while this might sound super confusing, it's actually a really simple concept. So the server is one player in the game. He gets assigned the role of server. So it's usually sort of chosen at random. It's, hey, you're the server. And the server's job is to make sure nobody is cheating. So for example, if I wanted to fire my gun, I would actually tell the server, hey, I want to fire my gun. And then the server would fire the gun for me. And the server would tell me if I hit someone or not. And although that might sound a little bit weird, why do I need to tell the server I'm doing it? It's really just to stop cheating mainly, because back in the day it was really easy to fool the game. There was plenty of ways you could just say, hey, I want to deal 1,000,000 points of damage to that guy, and then the guy would infinitely, or he'd die straight away. Or you could say, hey, I've got 1,000,000 points of health, and nothing would check it. And that's bad, because people can cheat. But with the server, the server can go, you don't have 1,000,000 points of health. I've been keeping track of your health. Sorry, you don't have that much health. So that's the point of the server. And whenever you want to do something gameplay important, and by gameplay important, I mean like shooting, killing another player, dealing damage, things that actually really matter to the game, you want to make sure that the server is in control of that. So it's really important that you understand server. If I click on play here, I'm going to select new editor window. You can see that there is a server and then there's two clients. You can actually see on the header of this window here, game preview server. So this one here is the server. He's the master. He makes sure that no one is cheating. And then these guys, the clients, are still very much players in the game, but when they want to shoot, they ask the server to shoot, and then the server will carry out the shooting and deal all the damage and that stuff. So it's a weird concept, but I need to get that out of the way so that when I show you guys how to make our shooting mechanic, it'll sort of make sense why we're doing it the way that we're doing it. So with that said, we're going to come back into our player here, and you can see that we have our input action fire still. What we need to do is we need to tell the server that we want to shoot, because remember I said clients need to tell the server they're going to shoot, and then they can shoot. And if you're the server, you don't actually need to tell anyone to shoot, because you are the server. So you don't tell the server to shoot if you are the server, because you are the server, right? That's how that works. So, and in fact, when you're playing a video game, you might notice that the person who is the host of the game, or the person who is the server, he actually has an advantage, and it seems like his shots are hitting more than your shots are hitting, or something like that. And it's because the server doesn't need to send anything over the network, right? It doesn't need to tell another machine to shoot for him. He just does it himself. So anyways, we want to tell the server to shoot, and there's actually a specific way of doing this. We need to make a new event, so just type custom event and give this a name. So this input action fire is when we press the key, but we want a special event for the server to do. So I'm going to call this server fire gun, right? So we're going to tell the server to fire a gun, and you'll notice over here there's this option replicates, and if you click the drop down, here it is, run on server. So if you click run on server, it'll actually make the server do this instead. And like I said, firing your gun, you want to do it on the server. I could just call this fire gun and just do it locally, but if I did that, it wouldn't be networked, and again, you really want to make sure that the server's doing this stuff. There's this checkbox here as well that says reliable. Make sure that's checked. If it's not reliable, sometimes this won't happen, and that's very bad. Imagine if you went to go shoot and then the shot never happened, right? So make sure that you check reliable so that it happens every time. The reason we have reliable is because some things actually aren't that important, right? So it doesn't matter if occasionally an explosion doesn't go off in the background. And in that case, we could have it unreliable, you know, or some sparks go flying or something. It's not a big deal, and people probably won't even notice. But for firing a gun, you really want that to happen every time. Okay, so watch this. What I'll do is I'll come in here and I'll type print string, and I'm going to print a string in my server event that I've made. So this is going to happen on the server and only on the server. When I press the fire key, I'm going to call server fire gun. So I'm telling the server I'm firing my gun. And notice it says replicated to server. So the server is going to see this and it's going to handle this. And then I'm going to print string and just say pew pew, just like I did before. Right? Compile, save, and check this out. Now if I shoot on the server, it says server pew pew. Now what you would expect if I shot on the client is it should say client pew pew, but actually it'll say server pew pew. So no matter what client or server or whatever I'm shooting on, the shooting logic is always going to happen on the server, and this is really important. Otherwise people are going to hack your game, they're going to cheat in your game, and your game's just not going to work. Unreal Engine is set up so you have to do it this way. You have to make everything go through the server. It really forces you to do that so that people aren't cheating in your game. Okay, now keep in mind though, with the shooting, right, it's great that we're doing the shooting on the server, but there are still some parts of the gunshot that we want to do on your own machine as well, because think about it. When you shoot your gun, stuff happens on your screen, right? You see the gun recoil, you see the muzzle flash, you might see some cool effects. The key thing is, the server's doing the stuff like dealing damage, and it's doing the stuff like checking if the bullet hit someone. It's doing stuff that would be really bad if you were able to cheat that stuff. But on the local machine, we still want you to be able to see the gun recoiling. We still want to see some effects, you know, and play some sound and things like that. So we still need another event called fire gun, but this fire gun is just going to happen on your own machine. It's just a normal, ordinary event that happens on your own machine. This one happens on the server though. So if we right click, we can comment on this, and we could just say important server damage stuff, and we can right click on this one and just say local client non-important FX or something like that, just so you know, just so that you remember what each of these does. So now I'm going to hold Alt and click to break that connection, and I'm just going to do fire gun first, and then I'm going to do the server fire gun, so that both the local machine has their own firing stuff and the server has their own firing stuff as well. And what we'll do is we'll just play some effects. So we really want to play a recoil animation, and to do that, there is a node that we can use. We're going to drag the first person arms in, these things, if you click on them, these first person arms. You can play an animation with these. Since it's a skeletal mesh component, if we hold control and drag it in, it has this special node called play montage. And when you click on play montage, this will let you play an animation. So we simply just connect this up like that, and now it's going to play whatever animation we select. Now there's only one animation that we have with this template, and that's the fire montage. So if we click on that, let's go back into the game and hit play. Check it out. The fire animation plays when I click. So that's awesome. That's a really good starting point. And it will serve as a really good point for us to continue on from. Now the next thing we're going to do is also play a gunshot sound. To do this, just drag out. So we're just saying that we want to do something after we've played the montage. So just drag out from here. And we're going to use play sound at location. So this is going to play a given sound, and it's going to play it at a location. So go ahead and click the drop down and select the sound that you want to play. And we're going to select this fire one. And then you also need to select where you want to play this sound. I want to play the sound at the location of my character's gun. To do that, I can hold control and drag the weapon in. And we're just going to get the location of our player's weapon. And plug that in. Another thing is, we kind of want to make sure our player has a gun before we go firing their gun. If you don't have a gun to fire, then it would look stupid if we played the montage and made the sound and stuff if the player didn't have a gun in their hands. So we can just drag weapon in again. And remember, this is storing whatever the player's current weapon is. And one way to check if it's storing anything or not, aka do we have a weapon or not, is simply just to say is valid. You might remember we did that before. So you check if the weapon is valid, and if it is valid, then shoot the weapon. If it's not valid, that means we don't have a weapon to shoot. Now we can go ahead and compile save, hit play, and shooting is working. Now, you're not going to hear it in my recording because I have desktop audio turned down to 0, but you should hear it on your own machine. Okay, now we still need to add muzzle flash and some other things to the game, but at this point I'm pretty happy with those effects. They look okay, and I just want to move on to making sure our bullets can hit other people. Now again, the bullets hitting other people thing is really important stuff. You don't want to be able to cheat the game when it comes to that stuff. And so we're going to be doing it down here in the server event. It's very important. Server needs to be doing that. And what we want to do is basically just cast an invisible line and see if our bullet would have hit the enemy. So to do that, we're going to do something called a line trace. And there are plenty of different types of line trace, but we're going to try line trace by channel. There are different channels, and the visibility one includes things that you can see. And so basically, we're just going to check if our bullet hits something you can see, and that should work. You can also do object types and other various things, but I just want to keep it simple for now. And what we want to do is we want to check the player's point of view. If you don't know, in FPS games, the player actually shoots out of their eyes. And you can test this by standing behind cover and only your head pops up and you'll be shooting out of there. So what we're going to do is just get the location of the player's eyes. And we can do that by getting the player's controller. The controller is kind of like a soul that carries the player forward, if that makes sense. So the character is the thing that you can see in the game. It's these things you can see here. These are our characters, but the characters are controlled by controllers. So that's what a controller does. It's kind of like the thing you don't see, if that makes sense. And what we want to do is get the controller, and then from there we can do get actor eyes viewpoint. And what this will do is it'll give us the location of our eyes, and we can use this now. So I want to cast an invisible ray starting at the player's eyes and ending somewhere in the distance. Now the distance doesn't really matter. It depends how far your gun can shoot. And we're just going to say that our gun can shoot 10,000 units. And in Unreal Engine, 1 centimeter is 1 unit. So what we'll do is we'll see where they're looking and we'll get that as a vector. This is kind of linear algebra stuff. It might pay to learn some linear algebra, but if you don't understand what this is doing, it's okay. We're not going to be doing a ton of super math focused things, but I would maybe supplement this by learning a little bit about linear algebra and vectors and things like that. It can be quite useful. But in any case, we're going to multiply this forward value by, say, like 10,000, right? So that would be, what would that be? Would that be 100 meters, or would that be, yeah, that would be 100 meters. So we're going to shoot 100 meters into the distance, and we have this value of 100 meters, and we just add that on to our starting value, like so. And then what we can do is plug that into the end. So we're saying shoot starting at where the actor is and then end at where they're looking, but 100 meters in the distance. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then from there we can check if we've hit another player, basically. What we're going to do is we're going to also ignore ourselves, and what we can do is get self. So what self is it's our player, basically. And then we're going to ignore ourself. Now we can't actually plug it into here because it wants multiple things to ignore. It wants an array, which is a list of things. So we can just make an array. Just click on make array. An array is just like a list of things, but we're only going to have one thing in our list, if that makes sense. We're just going to add ourselves to the list, and that's it. So that will allow us to check if we've hit something. And what we can do is we can break this hit structure. This is a structure that contains a bunch of information about what you hit. So drag out, and you can break it and get a bunch of information out of it. So we can see what time did we hit the thing we hit, what distance did we hit the thing, what location did we hit, tons of different things. What surface did we hit? We're interested in knowing which actor we hit. We want to know if we hit another player, right? Remember how I said anything in the level is an actor? Well, that includes the players in the game, right? So we're going to take the actor that we've hit, and we're going to see if it is a player. And the way of doing that, I know this is a little bit confusing, but the way of doing that is to cast it. Now, the hit actor is just an actor, but we don't want an actor. We want to know if it's a character. And you can see it's called first person character up here. So if I just type cast to first person character and plug that in, if the cast failed, that means we didn't hit a character. So let's drag out of the cast failed, and let's type print string, and we'll say we did not hit another player. Otherwise, let's say we did hit another player, and we're going to compile and save this, and let's check if it actually worked. I'm going to hit play, and I'm going to look at another player and click the button. We did not hit another player. We did not hit another player. Let's try it on client. We did not hit another player. So for some reason, it's not hitting another player. And we need to figure out why that's happening. I'm sure it will be a really simple thing. I'll just be right back and we'll figure out why the raycast isn't hitting. Okay, so the problem is really simple. All we need to do is open up the first person character, and you can see that we're hitting anything that is visible. And we're using the visibility channel to do so. If I click on the mesh though, the thing we're trying to shoot at, right, the other player, and we go down to the collision tab, you can see on the collision presets, the visibility option is set to ignore. So basically it means ignore the visibility channel, which is bad, right? It's not going to come back to us and give us a hit if we don't have that turned on. So just select custom in this box here, and then just turn that visibility checkbox on. I don't really know why it's off, but we're just going to turn it on. And now what you'll see, if we go into the game, we did hit another player, and then watch, if I don't look at the player, we did not hit another player. And just in case you're sort of struggling to grasp this, one thing you can do is you can turn on draw debug time for duration, and this will show you what it's actually doing. So check this out. When I shoot now, it'll actually show us what this raycast is doing, and when I shoot at a player, it'll show us where we hit the player. So it's really cool. We can actually see what's happening behind the scenes with this raycast as well. So all we want to do now is just make it so that if we hit someone, we'll just make them fall to the ground and quote unquote die. Okay, so we are basically right now, we're keeping track of what weapon the player has. We want to keep track of another thing now, and that is who killed us, right? So it might be not valid if no one's killed us, or it could be valid, someone might have killed us. So we're going to add a variable here, and I'm going to call this killed by, and it's going to store whoever killed us. And if we go up to the variable type, it's going to be a first person character. Right, it's going to be another character in the game that has killed us. So we're going to keep track of that, and we're going to do the same thing. When it replicates to other people, we want to do some special stuff. We want the character to fall to the ground. That's the sort of special thing that we want everyone to see. So we want to do another rep notify. So click on killed by and click on rep notify. And now it should do something when other people see who's killed you. We can make you fall to the ground, basically, inside of here. Just like when you equip the weapon, show everyone the weapon by attaching the weapon to you. When you die, show everyone that you've died by making your character fall to the ground. And we'll do that in a little bit. But for now, let's think about what we need to do. If we do get killed, we want to take the mesh and we want to make it fall to the ground, and we can do that by enabling collision for our mesh. So we're going to do physics collision, and we're going to simulate physics on the mesh. In other words, we're going to make it ragdoll. So type in set simulate physics and then set the box to be true. So now it's going to ragdoll, basically. One issue is that the player has collision, this capsule here, and if the player ragdolls, it's going to start hitting this capsule and spazzing out, and it's going to look really bad. So we want to disable collision on the capsule as well. And the way of doing that, hold control, drag in the capsule, and then just do set collision enabled, just like we did with the mesh, but we're turning it off. So just leave it as no collision. And we also don't want the character to be able to move. This component controls the character's movement, and we can drag that in with control. And to stop the player moving, stop movement immediately will do so. So now, when we hit another player, we are going to kill them. And we're going to do so on the server. So, if we drag off set killed by to us, we are the person that killed them, right? Plug that in, and let's see if it works. The moment of truth. Let me shoot someone. Check it out. They fall to the ground. Very cool. Now, keep in mind that people that die don't actually know they're dead on their own screen. So we need to do some special logic to handle that. And we're going to implement a spectator system so that when you do get shot and you die, you'll actually be able to spectate. But for now, this is a really good starting point. So you can see that other people die. You can shoot other people. But just on the local screen, nothing will happen. So that will be something we do in a future video when we implement spectating. But I think it's a good point to end this video because we have done quite a lot of work. And so yeah, you guys should be really proud of yourselves if you made it through all of this, because there was a lot to take in this video. I know that it is ramping up, but unfortunately online games, they just are very technical. So I hope you guys hang in there, and I'll see you guys in the next lesson.